Hello, 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 hello. Hopefully our audio settings are divine. It's been
Let's hope so.
it's been a minute. We had a nice little break, but we're back for some St. Patrick's Day, not even celebrations. I mean, you're wearing green. You're
Ah,
festive. You're in
twice.
it. I got I got green rocks.
Yeah,
Does that count for something?
it's got to. It
It's
will.
got to
It
count for
will.
something.
Yeah.
So, this we're talking about trad wives today. And you and I have talked about it a little bit because we planned this podcast out, oh fuck, probably a month ago now.
Yeah. It was a while.
Good chunk. So I've had like more time to sit on it too, just to see like if my opinion changes of it. But for me, it all started on TikTok. As I I guess as everything so far for us has started. Bama Rush started on TikTok. This one started on TikTok. So has this fallen on your TikTok at all?
No.
It
Not until we
has.
talked about it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So my TikTok is full of it. So just for a like generalized overview, the trad wife trend, and there is many extremes on this too. But it ranges in theory, it's the traditional values, like the traditional wife. So you'd have the wife who stays at home, who is the homemaker, who takes care of everything, and the male counterpart, the husband, works outside of the house. The wife doesn't work. And within that trad wife trend too, there are huge ranges because I think stay at home moms still happens, but this is a little bit more of an extreme version of that, I guess. Like it ranges from, like homesteaders who cook, grow, clean, sew, do everything. And then there's the emotional ranges where they talk almost like a subservient to their husband. There's that kind of
Mhm.
dynamic. So there's like multiple dynamics at play when we talk about the trad wife trend. So we'll see how it explores it. It's caused some internal confusion for me,
Interesting.
which when you I guess like when we go into like my background a little bit, my mom was always a big feminist. Huge. It was, my mom stayed at home when we were younger. So I think she went back to the workforce when we would have been in grade 3, 4 maybe. So I had kind of the experience of both because by the time my mom went back to all my siblings and I were in school full time. So she had maybe more time to work. It was a financial need for us at the time too. There was just we weren't making ends meet, so my mom had to. And then my parents were together until I was 15, 16, maybe. Like they did like the whole everything's fine, but dad's in the spare bedroom. And then they didn't like separate until I was an adult. But don't worry, everything was totally aces during that time frame. So like that's kind of like my context. So I have a little bit of everything when I talk about it, but my mom was a huge feminist. Like the don't rely on a man, get your career, have your own identity, don't let being a mom be your identity. So I had that big drive going through my life until I guess like I became a mom. And now I'm struggling to do both. And this is maybe what piqued my interest. So then I guess like the flip side or what made me want to talk to you about it is is there a difference because I'm in a heterosexual relationship and I want to like explore that avenue? Because does that even exist? Like it's not even hitting your algorithm. It's not hitting your TikTok, this trad wife thing.
Yeah.
Are are the gays out there doing things like this? Like what's your I guess like what's your background and how did you grow up?
Um, Okay, well, first of all, I don't know that I speak as a representative for all of the gays, but I will I will speak on my personal experience as a queer individual. But first the background. Whew. Yeah, loaded background. I mean, okay, so my parents divorced when I was 3. Uh, and my mom was a single mom working up until age 7 when she married my stepfather and then had a combined household again. Up until that point, 4 years of, the whole weekend with mom, weekend with dad, both independently supporting each other's households type deal. So she has worked most of my life. There was a period, I would say like middle school, that she was more like, I guess, like a stay-at-home mom for a little bit. Even now she's back at work. She has worked more than she has not worked through my life. Some was financial need, some I think was just choice and having something to do, and something kind of like mentally stimulating, more intensive than a hobby, and also payday attached with it.
Yeah.
As far as like traditional values, that's tough because my family unit personally not doesn't really observe traditional gender roles, I would say. Not between my dad and my mom. Not really at all. Um, However, being raised in the South, there is an overlay to that internal family unit and a zoomed out cultural view that I think may be at play sometimes in some of my views.
Kind of funny because I guess when I think about it too, like if I were to think trad wife, traditional values, my mind does go to the southern states as a place that would uphold that more. So it's interesting to me that there isn't that dynamic or that undertone there. But did you have lots of friends or like growing up lots of other people, or did you have lots of parents working?
Uh, okay, so I did move around a lot. So I will say that I think an element of socioeconomic status came into play because certain places that we lived that were, I guess, traditionally viewed as lower income, a lot of the parents did both kind of work. Later on, yeah, high school was a more well off place, I guess. And no, most of the moms did not work. Uh, they had a stereotype there, actually, of being like a PTO, PTA mom that just like caused trouble all the time.
PTO mom. Okay, and
Yeah.
I know some of this too. Like my mind, I think blends reality and TV sometimes with this subject specifically. Because the other part of like this happening too is I was watching Desperate Housewives the last month as well. So that probably didn't help my like pull or desire to this topic. And
Mhm.
I think it confuses me on many angles because obviously Desperate Housewives is TV and that is not what that is like. But at the same time, TikTok is also curated media. So I do have to keep that in mind and keep it like, take it with a grain of salt when I'm viewing this media. But I would say prior to having children, I was really big on that. And I think even through all of this, I'm still really big on having our own identity, right? If you're going to be a stay at home mom or a stay at home wife or whatever that may look like, the trad wife trend also extends outside of children. Some women just stay home as the homemaker. I think it's important that our identity is not solely that. But now that I'm in the position of both because I've had children, I've worked, or I've always worked, I guess, with children. The only time I had off was maternity leave. And I do have to say, maternity leave was fantastic for that. So in Canada, we get 1 year off maternity, which I know is very, very
Wow.
different. Yeah. And we recently changed it too. So we get 1 year off. I think it's 60% of our salary. Like it's paid by the government, like unemployment insurance pays it. Or you can take 18 months at 55%. And then a lot of companies, depending on where you work, have top ups as well. Mine didn't. So I took 1 year. But that's at the time, that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to go back to work. And I remember that itch real bad, especially after Scarlet, like the first one. Like I really was ready to go back home. Also, I was also done just being a dairy cow. By that point, I just was like, I wanted my body back. I wanted my life back. But then as I went back to work and I began to realize like how hard it is to work full time and then come back home and do all the home things and spend time with the kids and do all of those things. That's when I first started noticing the stress, like the weight on my shoulders of that. And then I became a single mom. So then it just exacerbated even further those issues. And now I am in a healthy relationship. We're together. We're contributing equally, financially, like we contribute to everything together. And Salty, bless his soul, is a wonderful partner and helps me. Okay, back up. I'm not using the word helps. He is an equitable and equal partner in that he takes on the duties of the household as well. I am not managing him. I am not his mother. So I have kind of like, I would say probably the best case scenario in working families in that we both contribute to the house financially. We both work in the house and do all the chores and, help raise this family. And even still, I just never feel like there's enough time. There's never enough time to be on top of the house, to be on top of the chores. Sometimes I'm so exhausted, I'm getting takeout more than I would want to. And like cooking for me is a little bit of a love language. Like if any of y'all want to ever come to my house, I will stuff you with food. I will fill your belly up with love and joy. But I don't have time to do that. Like I love making bread. I don't got time to do that. And so then seeing these women post these videos and post their lifestyles, albeit I understand it's the best case scenario, it's edited, it's all of that. It makes me wonder if I'm missing out on life a little bit. Like, could I be more connected to my family and my roots? That core feminine nurture energy because I need to work and have a career.
Do you think some of that lifestyle is appealing to you because of the stress and overwhelm that you feel from the life that we lead today and how it kind of is nearly impossible to have just a single income household? That's rare. That's not
Yeah.
the 95% of the population. I don't really care where you live looking at the world map. That's not most of people. Um so I do think there, to me, is an element of privilege behind it and it being whimsical to just be able to focus on one thing. Um, just be able to focus on one thing instead of juggling so many things in your life.
Yeah.
Um, that almost hits me as sad that this is like some debatable fantasy of like, oh my God, can I have a choice to like stay at home and just like make sure that I'm also taken care of in addition to the house and like just do one thing to have enough bandwidth to do stuff, like, I feel like that's kind of a reflection of today's times a little bit. Uh,
I think I think you're hitting it right on the head, and maybe
you
it is a
know?
fantasy. And, a lot of the conservative this has been a conversation on some of the other conservative, TikTok channels that I follow. Um, I think it's like the comment section, I think her name is Brett. Um, she's covered this a fair bit. I'm sure if I showed you her, you would recognize it, but she had this conversation about the nuclear family. And like, right, we shifted away from what that family looks like, but also just traditional feminine roles. Right. So when we
Mhm.
look, I guess, at like feminine nature, or even we're that nurturing role. We're that safe, warmth place. And we've see, it's so hard. This is so hard to approach. We moved away from that. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Never in a million years do I think that's a bad thing. I think when women were at home, at least when we look at, old, like, 20s to 50s, vibes where women stayed at home and they had to fight for rights, right? They're wanting something. And so now we've
Mhm.
gotten to this point where we're working, we have the right to vote, we have all of these things going on, and now women are fantasizing about staying at home. Like there is an element of maybe, the grass always looks greener somewhere else. And I definitely don't want to go like back in time. I think there maybe is just a more new modern way to approach this. And I think privilege is correct. In order for you to have a solo income house,
Mhm.
somebody's got to be making a good amount of money to make that happen, especially with the way things are going nowadays. But let's say money aside, let's take money out of that conversation
Okay.
and just talk about like the roles and staying at home and having that nurture, like having that time. Cause like
I need
when,
my notebook. Hold on.
yeah, you get your notebook, I'll keep chatting. Like, so when Salty and I get to the weekend, for instance, I have to spend the whole weekend doing the chores, catching up the house, and there's not this time to spend with the family. And one thing I did, note when I was on maternity leave, I was home every day and I was, up round the clock with the baby. But once they kind of settled down and I started having a little bit more of a routine and waking up and making breakfast every day, making lunch, we'd spend time outside in the afternoon. I'd do chores when they're napping and, we had dinner. There was just maybe like a little bit more sense of peace that was going on for me. And maybe I'm just forever chasing that and chasing that fantasy. But there is just this element of calm that came with it. And with working full time, I don't have that element of calm, right? I go right from busy work day all day to right into taking care of the kids, doing chores if I can during the weekday. Don't always have time. I spend my weekend then catching up everything. Like, where is this time to spend with my kids, my family? Sometimes I feel like I'm letting them down. I'm always so tired. I don't have bandwidth to spend that quality time with them.
Sounds like you're frustrated with yourself for not being able to do it all of the time, all at
Yeah.
once.
And I think it's just not possible. It is.
Not for
It's just
anybody, regardless of your gender role or
yeah.
background. You you
It
you cannot do it all the time.
it's just there's just so much to do. So then, if we treat it like a full-time job, right, where the person who stays home, like that is their job, that's 40-ish more hours a week that you have available to be running things. Like, sometimes during my workday and I've got the school calling me, I've got appointments to run to, I've got stuff going on. I have like this constant stress. And I have a partner who is really good, who, does their fair share in the house too. And I still have that sick amount of pressure on me all the time.
How open are you to detour questions with
But
just my impressions as you're talking here?
take me down this road. I already we joked before we went live. I said you're going to be beating me with the feminism stick, and I'm okay with this.
I don't even know that it's the feminism stick. I don't want to add that filter like preemptively with anything. Instead of having a very, I guess, traditional podcast format where this is super planned out, are we open to, some of our dialogues offline, how some questions come out of nowhere just based on impressions from you talking? Are you okay with that? Because
Oh yeah.
I think you would be
Yeah,
okay.
blindside me, baby.
So I do have a question because in talking, what you just talked about was a lot of parenthood
Mhm.
that I heard in it and raising your kids. Based on your experiences, do you think that a lot of the modern day raising a child is kind of rigged for guilt as a parent? I hear a lot of guilt from a lot of stuff that like you can't help, that is like 99% of the world is like, well, that's just how it is. But I still hear some like pre-baked guilt. What do you think about that? How does that hit you?
Two spots. I think there always is guilt uh with parenting just in general. I think no matter what your situation, no matter what you do, there is a certain level of parenting that there's just guilt involved. You do question naturally every day. Am I doing the right thing? Am I going to raise them to be good humans? Did I mess up? And I think especially with millennials, it seems to be with millennial parents, we're really in tune with trying to break generational curses essentially. And so every step of the way, my brain does think. So I have many moments where I'm like, oh man, I'm being just like my mom. I'm being just like my parents. And sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. I think we take snippets of our life and we do the best we can. And I'm a big advocate for every generation definitely does the best they can with what they have. And so there's a certain level of acceptance. I guess I have acceptance when it comes to that. I think my brain goes to maybe it is fantasizing. Maybe you or like something about that word when you said it kind of does stick into my head a little bit of like, I have these images of, in the afternoon going on a picnic with my kids and not even necessarily for them, but even for me, I don't get enough moments to just enjoy life because I'm so fucking busy. So fucking busy all the time. And it's not even necessarily maybe with kids, but even just like with my partner, like finding time to go on a date together, finding time, we love gaming, finding time to game together or just doing things as a family unit. It's rough. And my mind always goes back to that really analytical spot. So I try always to take the the um the guilt out of it. Like let's just go like straight analysis.
Mhm.
40 plus hours a week is spent outside the house working. If you move that inside the house, when the kids get back from school or when my partner goes back for school or comes comes back from school, comes back from work, or we have days off, if I'm, working in my house 40 hours a week, there's nothing to do extra when they come home other than to find those quality moments together, enjoy life. It's the slow lifestyle. That's it. I'm chasing the slow life. I want to slow down. I want to enjoy these moments. Like Scarlett's turning 8 next month.
Mhm.
And I'm reflecting upon the last 8 years and how fast it's gone. And so many of those moments I'm not there because I'm working, but then mentally I'm not present either because I'm cooking or I'm cleaning or I'm whatever else when they come home. So then that's where that that fantasy starts to play in. So then, TikTok pops up or whatever shows up, and you see these wives who are waking up with their kids, they're making breakfast together, they're, connected and fantasy I definitely understand, but I pivot that to imagining it in my life and what that could look like. I mean, I'm not about to go skipping down in a dress with a picnic basket, having this idyllic picnic in the park every damn day. But I could slow down for a moment and enjoy it. Like, real deal. When kids move out, I mean, you see them, but you spend the majority, like I remember reading it, hearing it somewhere. The majority of the time you spend with your children is like when they're under 18. And once that happens, you won't spend the same amount of time with them ever again.
Right.
So I get stuck in this like cycle of not even guilt, just me actually wanting that time.
Okay, I have a few framing questions.
Okay. Frame me.
And this is not as a criticism,
No, give it to
first
me.
off. Okay.
We have to
So
explore this.
you keep framing these things, or the conversation keeps coming back focused. I don't know if it's because you think that I have opposing views, that like traditional versus modern, progressive versus conservative, feminine versus more masculine, on like a threshold on opposite sides, right? And it being like more roles and stuff. What I am hearing when you were talking about this is so zoomed out from that. I'm not even seeing feminine or masculine. What I am hearing is that you feel in your day-to-day life like you have to focus on so many things, and your attention is split between so many things and multitasking and juggling things, that it would be nice to be able to hone your focus to one singular thing and be able to take care of that at the end of the day, instead of feel like you're always 1 foot out of it, juggling it while doing something else. And to me, that's I don't know a decent father out there that doesn't also want that very same thing with their kid, and I don't think it would once enter their mind to think that that's a feminine or like a gendered thing. I think to them it would
Yeah.
just. But then I also think about feminine roles and masculine roles, because, and I may be wrong here, okay? Chat, Space is talking out of their butt right now, okay? I don't want to pull up Google for the sake of conversation to prove a point of whether I'm right or not, so we're going to speak in hypotheticals, because that's what we're exploring, is how this makes us feel, and not what historical fact the American versus the Canadian is right about, okay? Astral's
Eric?
education system was far superior to mine. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. All right. You hear my twang. Which of us had the better education? Who do you think
I'm
scored
about
higher on an
ready to put
ACT?
like the Canadian and the
Please.
American under like under my video.
Yeah. Yeah. Like full flag, whatever our national anthems are, eagle screeches. Okay. So just know that more a thought experiment than anything, okay? It's not about being right here. But
Yes.
you talked about returning to like traditional values. I would be curious to research US versus Canadian as well, because there could be differences. How much time the stay at home mom, that trend, that trad wife trend that you're referencing, how long that actually took place. I feel like it is a shorter time period and only accessible to more middle America. And I could be wrong about this, but I believe it entered more and got more popular 80-ish on back, and then kind of faded in the background more recently before like the 2000s, another dip. But I believe, like, if we're talking way traditional, like way back, I feel like the woman worked prior to the Industrial Revolution and contributed to the household equally, it was not it was just not viewed as a singular focus, one task, one job outside of the home. Because when you look at least for America, I feel like pre-industrial revolution, the women had to be seamstress and textile workers basically, but inside the home. Now, whether those feminine roles arose because it was male female in that time, or whether in the moment it was born out of necessity for strengths and weaknesses to, okay, well, the woman needs to feed a child. The cheapest, most accessible way back then, pre-industrial revolution in America, was breastfeeding. That was typically the goal. If you could,
Yeah.
that's a more accessible way. Okay, well, that has a child on you. Well, what can you do? Okay, you can't really work in a factory with the child, and this is pre-industrial. The textiles, I mean, you can't really till and work the field. So the dude can be away from the child for a little bit out of necessity without having to feed.
Yeah.
So some of those things I feel like lend themselves to multitasking inside the home.
Mhm.
So the woman was at home contributing, just put it under the broad umbrella of textiles, the clothes, patchwork, cooking. Cooking can be stopped and started. Child stuff. I just think of those things, and I just repeatedly keep coming back to the multitasking and how that's, whether it's because you're a woman or because, okay, you have to be inside the home, what can you fill two roles with at once? You've got the kid and can also do this and start and stop. Dude can just plow through, get the field. That's on a timer. You can't start and stop
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So whether it's sorted because of either reason, what I'm still hearing is you go do this because this needs to require singular focus, juggle. And you don't ever really stop juggling.
Yeah, there's a little bit. I think some of it too, and maybe this is where we, later on we can explore it in the modern conversation, that my brain defaults to the woman being at home. And I don't know if that's just because of my upbringing. Like I had my mom stay at home, and I've been in heterosexual relationships my whole life. So that my brain might be defaulting to that. And like Salty and I have talked about it before. Like, let's say I had a job where I made more than he did. If I would have that struggle with him staying at home, no. I think just like my brain first goes to that analytical standpoint of, and I can't get out of that loop. It's just there's only so many hours in a day to do so many things. But I do have that nurturing side to me, right? Like there are fantastic men, and Salty is one of them, but the man's ability to empathize and to nurture is not there. And so I want to do that. I want to take care of my family. I want to nurture them. I want to be bonded with them. So there is that component. And then there's kind of that emotional component too we touched on as well, which is newer to me and even more difficult to understand. So it's not I will never be subservient to Salty. I think that's like a big like post-it note. We have to put that on there. I will never be like to the point where we're talking about like our wedding vows and stuff, because we have that coming up. And I will not have the I will obey. That is just, that's not happening. But I think, and maybe has to do with bandwidth. Like you're hitting some good points in here. I want my husband to lead. I want to fall back more than I would have imagined. And having like my husband lead the house or lead our unit. And I like to support.
What does that mean to you? So have him do what?
Like, well, one take. Oh, I don't even know how to define that. Like there are some
like,
things
paint a picture. Like if we're living in like Astral's fantasy, let's build the fantasy.
Okay, listen, it is a little like 50s style. Yeah, they brought up here like
There's
traditional
nothing wrong with
housewife
that.
was
There's
pretty
no
much
judgment here.
1940s to 1980s is what people are telling us, which kind of checks out for at least what I mentally imagined. But like, he comes he comes through the door and I take his coat off for him. I have dinner ready for him. There's some of those aspects which can be considered submissive in a way. I hate making decisions all the time. I do have decision fatigue in my life. I have so many things and I just want someone to take the reins where I just sit back and I take care of things. I like to support the people around me. And something that we do that I know he really loves, I give him pedicures quite regularly. Like we'll sit on the couch and like I do his toenails. He enjoys it. It's something that's relaxing and I enjoy doing for him. But, then there's easily that argument like he can cut his own nails. He can go do his things. Like some of these things where we're taking care of each other. So I'm taking care of the house and sometimes him and then he's financially taking care of me and the children. Like it's a mutual respect thing and somebody had mentioned that there's nothing wrong inherently with traditional roles. It's the respect thing that becomes an issue, which I wholeheartedly agree. Like if you are staying at home, that is a job. That is, and it needs to be respected as so. And I think the big push too, or a lot of women wanting to go to work and having their own money is when divorce became a reality. That's, through the time divorce rates have come up. Sometimes they're left with nothing, or sometimes they don't know because they're not involved in the finances, or, whatever it is financially, you have to be able to leave or have to be secure. So if you're giving up your career or your life to stay at home, you need to be subsidized and paid as such. But in order to do that, you have to have a deep level of respect for each other to sit down and clean your man's feet, but then also have him financially support you. There has to be this real deep level of trust to do that, for sure.
I do hear a lot of trust being needed in that exchange. Not just needed, but it should be there. It should that should be the foundation as a couple to me.
I think
I definitely agree with you there.
service is right. I think in my ideal imagination world where I'm a stay-at-home wife,
Mhm.
we're both serving each other in our best skill set.
Yeah, you are.
Hell yeah. Right? I don't want to say physically serving him. Oh my God, we're going to turn into that kind of podcast real quick. Wait, but I'm physically doing the things of the house and
Uh-huh.
he is financially serving me. And I'm just making myself sound like a prostitute. Oh man.
Yup. You heard it like 2 seconds after. Yup.
Oh, yeah. I will not sell myself physically for money. We need to clarify that one.
We have nothing to do with the OnlyFans ad that's gonna roll across the
Yeah.
bottom of the screen
And
on
yeah,
some
it's like
platforms after the fact.
future editing us is like putting an ad
Yeah.
for OnlyFans in the middle of this.
Exactly.
But it is that mutual respect. And I think maybe the traditional values that I am fantasizing, right? Because women pushed really hard to get out of that, I think happened
Mhm.
because there wasn't a mutual respect for that life at that time, right? Women were looked down upon in some ways.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, still kind of are, but you know what I'm saying? Like the stay-at-home wife role, I don't know, because now I do kind of feel like it's like a badge of honor, right? If financially you can afford it, right? Not many people can. And I think back then too, I think there is definitely a level of privilege to it back then as well. Because like if you were broke,
Yeah.
you did jobs, but they were very poor jobs, not well looked upon jobs, right?
Okay, so I'm not trying to get us canceled. I'm trying to draw some parallels between not just money situation and like traditional values, but being from the South. Okay, we know space is from the South, all right. I have heard from some older family members, okay, that were not racist. Let's clarify, they were not, okay, but That is a thing that gets thrown around more in the South because it's more common there, okay? When accused of being racist, their, whether it's right or not, defense was, our family was too poor to be racist. That takes privilege to own slaves. We were working the fields with you. We were there with you, type thing. And that always struck me that even to them, it was like, A, I'm not, but that takes such a level of being removed from a situation to have those thoughts and feelings of people that I am shoulder to shoulder with. Are you joking? Who do you think I clocked in today and clocked out? Are you joking? And that, I don't know why that stuck with me or why that just come up, and maybe that gets us canceled. But do you know what vein I'm talking about with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can see, like I said, I think that's where this internal struggle comes from for me. Because in some ways, like with my previous partner, if I had been a stay-at-home wife and let's say we fell into those gender roles, I would have been trapped in that relationship. I would have been forced into something. I would have been miserable. I would have felt like not equal, right? Like there's just no way. I would have felt like a slave to my own house, to my children, my partner, my life. Like with that human, in no way, shape, or form would this have ever worked.
Mhm.
And it shouldn't. It should never be that way. And like in that regard, I am like adamantly opposed to having a stay-at-home wife or stay-at-home whoever if that's the dynamic. Right? And you have to get rid of that power. Power is that big dynamic. If you're going to do this, there can't be a power, like one person has the power. And let's be honest, more often than not, the person who has the money, historically, even outside of relationships, we're talking countries, life in general, the person who has the money has the power. And so when you think of these old dynamics, I think that's where a lot of this negativity towards this conversation comes from, because women did not have power, right? The men had the money, they had the power societally and financially to control all of these things. And so I just want a modernized version of this. Can I make sourdough bread every goddamn day? I just want to make sourdough bread every day. Have you seen? They make cereal. I saw them making Cinnamon Toast Crunch the other day. I don't know. First off, I don't know why my mind ever thought that you could not make cereal, because it is just like basically mini bread. It's like flour and whatever else. You roll it out, you bake it, and then congratulations, you have Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Like, am I going to make cereal every day? Is that expectation? No. I think definitely some of these videos and these conversations are that's not reality. You're not going to wake up every day and put curlers in your hair and do the full makeup and the dress, and then you're going to make the Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Like, I can separate that fantasy side of it. I don't know. Maybe I want to live in that dream world a little bit.
I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting those things, though. I mean, I think it's okay. I think it is sad that that is basically a fantasy, and kind of whimsical in today's time. I think it should be a choice for everybody, regardless of your gender role. Do I want a one-person house? Do I want a two-person house? I feel like we're at that point as a society, technological advancements, yada, yada, yada. If we weren't putting profits above people, we could all be on a pretty good baseline, I feel like. Think I'm wrong, prove it. Prove me wrong. Let's fight. Fight me.
So,
Whatever.
honestly, like,
But
sometimes, okay, you can't beat me on it with the virtual stick on this one. Sometimes I dream or like fantasize about needing surgery, like so I can have like the 6 to 8 weeks off of work. And like, yeah, like obviously I'm healing from a surgery or healing from whatever, but like just to be home. That's like that same conversation. Okay, so I also have had this conversation before.
that
I'm
just sounds like trauma, Astral.
like
I'm
Probably.
being for real.
Definitely with my ex, I remember being like, "I just wanna get in a car accident." Like, nothing so severe that, like, I'm actually forever physically altered, but, like, enough that I need to stay at the hospital for, like, a week or 2, because
You
then
you
somebody's
do know
bringing
that's
me
like a
food.
clinical sign, right? I'm not kidding. Like, that's a sign of not just, like, childhood trauma, but, like, complex PT like,
Oh, yeah,
wishing
no.
that it was worse to, like, just
Yeah, no, for sure. That's also a new actually is a newer diagnosis to me. I do definitely have CPTSD that I am dealing with from that. So there is that. Like, I do wonder, like, had I met Salty first, had I met this really fantastic partner, would I have these internal struggles as much as I did? Like, my pregnancies would have looked very different. My maternity leave, my foundation of what a family should or what should feel like. I don't say should be because I think it's very different for everybody. What it should feel like.
but in your
Maybe,
mind to you.
yeah, maybe that will be different because I started this life with somebody else. And that foundation, unfortunately, was very broken and full of trauma. So I'm forever trying to heal with that and move on with that. Maybe it would look very different, but it still doesn't take away from there's only 24 hours in a day and there's only so much you can do every single day.
I'm not opposed to the movement. I just I don't know, I stand that it shouldn't be a thing. It should just like, we shouldn't work towards just women being able to have that choice again, like, we should work towards as a society it being affordable that no matter that being a choice to people. I guess to me, like, I see your points, definitely see why it's appealing.
Like, let's
I
say,
do have some questions, though, to challenge how universal it is and how much I have some questions because I would like to suss out how much of this is some, like, burnout and overwhelm that I'm definitely hearing that, like, I think everybody has,
oh yeah,
versus,
big time.
like, your nurturing side and just that being your natural I guess your natural, pull to nurture, I guess, and, like, take care
Fair.
of and, like, nest and love on the kiddos and stuff,
Nesting is a good word. It's funny because I think about it even in video games now. Like, obviously, we play COD and Overwatch is kind of like my first multiplayer game where I played with other people, where I got to explore like different roles and things like that. I like supporting people. I don't like pushing in. I don't like making the decisions. I don't like to take the point. I like to hang back. I like to support the people as they go in and say, "Hey, I got you." That is like one of my favorite things to be your pocket healer, to and it's funny because it is a joke in the gaming world. Oh, you're a woman. Are you playing healer? Okay. To be fair, I flex. I want this very very like in neon lights put across the screen. Future editing me. Um, I flex when I play Overwatch. I play tank, DPS, and healer. I am not a solo healer. I need that to be explicit. But when I'm playing like tank or DPS, like something intensive, I'm stressed out. I'm trying to make decisions. I'm trying to make calls. I'm trying to do all the things. And support to me is just such a laid back, easy role. It's they're making the decisions. I'm following. I'm supporting you. I've got your back. I I enjoy that portion. So some of it is that I like that support role. But let's flip it. So let's say your partner, we'll put an arbitrary number out there just for the sake of taking finances. Let's say they make $1 million a year
okay,
and you have the ability to stay home full time.
okay.
Or no, let's the other way around. Okay, wait. Do you like career more or do you like stay at home more?
It depends on what you're putting in that. I like I like being at home. I like the freedom and flexibility. I don't want to slave away outside of my home continuously.
Okay, let's play.
But I'm not just going to, in the traditional role of a stay-at-home mom, to take care of like the house, the kids, all of that, and not have some form of career. No.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so
No.
let's play imaginary world. Let's
Okay.
say our podcast takes off. You're making $1 million a year, and this is like our full thing. Like this is all we do. And you have
Okay.
somebody who stays at home full time. Like when you come home from recording, the house is clean, they've got dinner ready, they've got a bottle of wine, and the two of you can hang out in the evening, and there's nothing else to do. You don't have chores most of the time. Which, hold on, there you still will have chores in theory, right? You still have to contribute to the house. There will still be things that will happen, but ideally, let's just talk generally speaking. When you get home from work, your work day is done. Their work day is done too, because you guys don't have kids. Does that not appeal to you? Like having that person like supporting that. Like you don't have to worry about what's going on at home. You can focus on the career and the money and providing for this person who is also doing all of these things for you.
It makes me suspicious. And in that realization, I think I'm hearing are both admitted forms of trauma manifesting in a little bit different ways
Now that is interesting now that
versus a hyper independence. Yeah, because
you're having
that,
that.
like, immediately my question is, that's too easy. What else do you expect from me? What's the no, no.
See, and it would
What
have to
else am
be
I supposed to be doing? That sounds like a trap.
so what makes you feel that way? Is that something you witnessed from your family, or is that something you've experienced in your
Um,
relationship dynamics? Like how do you divide household chores as a queer individual?
so I do think there is a bit of a difference as a queer individual how you divide them because there is a lot of overlap. So you naturally are like, okay, well, if we're gonna go traditional roles, who's gonna do what? So you kind of have to go to the next category to sort it, which is strengths and weaknesses. Um, so I mean that, but then also I am very intentionally focused, possibly because of how I've seen stuff. I don't want to say necessarily my upbringing. I was a very observant child. So a lot of what I observed and took in from the world around me that I speak on doesn't necessarily mean, oh, that means Space's upbringing and parents did X, Y, and Z and acted like this. You know what I mean? Like, I took in a lot of the world
Mhm.
around me. I was able to suss out, okay, my parents are both not very concerned with gender roles and are more focused on what matters, what helps each other in a relationship. My father, he, I feel like, is a more acts of service individual, and that is how he shows how he cares. And he typically does a lot of the more feminine role, I would say, from an outsider view. But to me, it is just those acts of services roles inside the house. He likes cooking for us. I won't say he likes cleaning, but one of his things, because it always makes me feel guilty when I go home, is when we all eat dinner together, whoever cooks doesn't clean, right?
Yeah.
Well, he enjoys cooking. So then afterwards, we got to clean up. But a lot of time we'll be like sitting at the table, talking, catching up, stuff like that. And he'll get up and go and start to clean. And so you're like, no, 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 dad, stop, stop, stop. Don't do that. But you're also enjoying the moment in the conversation. It's such a cognitive dissonance moment because like we've had conversations about this and I'm like, will you please, just please do me the favor, if nothing else in your adult life, please stop doing the dishes. It makes me feel rushed with my conversation. I still want to sit and enjoy like this conversation with you and everybody, but I don't want you to do the dishes. I still want to do that as like not even a thank you, but yes, a thank you still. And like, honoring that because I'm a little acts of service too. So it's kind of like an acknowledgement and a nod. But for him, he is so rooted in acts of service that it makes him so almost like whimsical, I guess, that we're having that moment as a family and he's able to zoom out and see that and is like taking it in, that he wants to preserve that. So he does the dishes to keep that moment. And I just wish he was able to see himself more as a part of that moment instead of preserving it and him doing it separate.
That's
You know what I
listen,
mean?
him and I might be kindred souls here. Cause like that's like maybe some of this too definitely is a little bit of that like love language conversation. So acts of service is my primary. By far and large is my primary.
Mhm.
So the thought of like me cleaning the kitchen and watching like the girls and my family all sitting at the table conversating together makes my soul warm. It makes it so happy. And then at the end of the day or the end of the dinner or whatever that would be, like to end that night and see this moment of connection, and then the kitchen is clean, and the next morning when I wake up and I wake up to a clean kitchen and clean everything, and I have my cup of coffee and I'm thinking about the night before and everybody bonding. It's that support thing, right? I'm providing that conduit for everybody to sit and my family to be connected.
I think it's a beautiful thing.
God
I don't
damn it.
think there's anything wrong with that. It just, I guess to me, when you initially brought up this conversation, I could tell you saw black and white stripes and you thought zebra. And I heard the same thing, but I guess maybe because of my upbringing and because, like, okay, the person that is going to cook if there is a big shindig, that's my dad. Like, my mom's a great cook. Don't get me, that's not a knock against my mom. My mom is a great cook. Who is going to love it and love that hosting experience and it not be kind of a, yeah, I'll cook. Like, she will. She still enjoys it. It feeds his soul, and it's obvious. Even if she doesn't mind, it's a thing for him. He loves it. You can tell it actively feeds his soul, and there is nothing he loves more than being able to put that on and like facilitate that for us as a family. And I guess facilitate that connection for all of us and bring us together. That was a big focus growing up, was family dinners. If nothing else, we would sit down for dinner. And it wasn't rooted in any kind of traditional teaching more than, you're my family and I want to see you and we like each other. So I want to fucking talk to you. So, like, let's make a plan to sit down and talk to each other once a day. And it
So
never had to go any deeper than that.
what's really funny about that, so same thing, family dinners, and as we got older, it steered away from daily, but it was Sunday, right? Sunday, everybody sat down for family dinner, and it was that moment to reconnect because our weeks were so busy. But right now, it's something I notice with the girls. I don't eat with them very often, and a lot of the time it's because I'm overstimulated by the end of the day. I wait to eat my dinner until they're in bed. And they ask me, and this one has been surprising me lately, but sometimes they'll be really sad if I say, no, I'm not going to sit down with you. Like they are craving me to sit down with them. And so a lot of the time now I'll sit at the dinner table. I won't eat because I really do enjoy just eating alone at the end of the day, because they're still always asking for something or they need something. So I'm still getting up quite a bit. They're still pretty little. And maybe that will change as they get older, but there is something I do enjoy about eating alone. But I've started sitting with them a little bit more, but it's still really hard. It's just so hard for me. And maybe it is a trauma thing and a little bit of the ADHD kind of all strung together that I don't have the spoons. I want to have the spoons to connect in that moment. And connection is something, unfortunately, for me that takes energy away. It's not something that fills my soul. And it's that same kind of conversation, right, with your dad, going and doing the dishes. Sitting there and talking sometimes is rough for me. But in the kitchen where I'm cleaning and I can see my family all sitting together and they're laughing, they're well fed, they feel loved, and I've influenced or made this connection happen because of what I've been doing, that makes me happy.
I
And
think what's Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say that the stay-at-home wife or the traditional wife is just the highest form of that, right? I still do that. I still provide these moments. I cook, I clean for my kids all the time, but there's a
Right.
certain level of disconnect with it. Where if that's all I do, that would make my soul so happy.
Hmm. I guess I'm listening to you, I guess from like your mom perspective with stuff
Mhm.
and like comparing that to my upbringing. My parents were extremely busy. There was Both of them worked through most of my life. And then jobs that had long hours. They weren't like my dad. I don't think my dad's ever worked like a 9 to 5, get to clock out. Like he's getting phone calls all hours of the night.
Yeah.
It's pretty much 24/7, always working.
Yeah.
Pretty much my entire life. 4 kids.
Busy house.
Yeah. Um, so I don't remember many m- moments where there's long blocks of time to where I could spend like quality time with them. Um, but what they did do was try to make when that did happen more quality focused than it happening more frequently quantity, I guess. And there's a funny balance that keeps popping into my mind because we tried to have dinners every day. Did it happen every day? No. Every single one of the kids played sports,
Yeah.
multiple sports. Fucking high school, I was in 3. My parents were never home at the same time. I mean, ballpark dinners. But I do also think there's an element of some undiagnosed ADHD from a little bit of both of them, but that's just
There's a huge genetic
my
component to
opinion.
it. So if
I
you do,
mean,
who's
I just
undiagnosed in your family?
right, exactly. But I do remember there being a very intentional focus, and I think something that was passed on to me that I've never even thought about, to where it's not about how often you do it, but that you do like commit to doing it and have that intentional focus to where when we did sit down for dinners, you put your phone up, pay attention to each other.
Mhm.
When you deviate and you're a teenager and you start doing that, hey, I get it. I get being a teenager every other time this 1 hour. It's all we're asking from you. Just
Yeah.
from a respect thing. What if like your friends were talking face to face, which ties into a bigger lesson of, well, I'd sit here on my phone with my friends. Really? You're that disrespectful with your friends? How about you care a little bit more for the people around you? And then you're like, oh shit. Okay, maybe I shouldn't do that with my friends either. All right, good point.
Yeah.
Ma, Dad, you're right. But with those dinners, we had intentional time. But I do also remember my mother tends to get a little more overstimulated, I think, from like lights and sounds and stuff. I think I've mentioned to you before the quiet time we all had. We had family dinners and spoke to each other pretty much every day. You know what we also had almost every day? An hour where mom got to get away from the children. I don't care what you do, all the love and respect. Don't care what you do it away from me and do it quietly. Go in your room and scream. Just make sure I can't hear it. 1 hour. If you're not on fire, somebody else on fire or dying, just figure it out. Figure it out. Watch a movie. I don't care what you do. I don't care. Learn some independence. Study. Read a book. Don't care. Just don't bother me.
Yeah,
And it
we
taught
had those
some
too.
self independence and some, oh my God, could this argument wait kind of stuff. And then I definitely remember a balance that I haven't actively thought about, and I don't think was that intentional by my parents. Like I don't think they ever sat down and was like, okay, so we need to balance out, the time that we're spending here. But I do think it speaks to their parenting and where their, I guess, heart comes from. That they have kind of passed that along without even realizing it and made that a very intentional focus. And maybe that's why when we're talking about it being like male or female, I just view it as a does the person want to do that and want to be around and have that available? And I think that should be available.
Okay, so let's flip the narrative to a not gender role based thing
Mhm.
with your family. So let's say your mom works. Same
Okay.
scenario though, where like money's not an option
Mhm.
and your dad stayed home.
Mhm.
So he got to do that, like cook for you every day, care for you every day. Your mom's out doing her dream job, whatever it may be, making the bacon, making the world go round. Do you think your life would have been better? You come home and you have that role, or like let's say you're sick and you're at home all day with your dad, who's there to just take care and nurture you and have the availability. Your sports always there. Both of them, maybe in this scenario, depending how much the other person works. But let's say just like a traditional 9 to 5 for the sake of the fantasy world of just that parent at home
Mhm.
having that care and that comfort always there. Or do you feel like you still had that even with it being less quantity?
I do think I had it, even with it being less quantity. I do want to say that. What I will say to answer your question is I think no matter the situation, if one partner strictly wants one thing and the other, and that works out together, I always think that is a better situation. I don't care who wants to fill the role, male or female. I think it should be available if you want that.
Mhm.
The only time I don't think it is appropriate is when someone is forced into that role
Yeah.
or forced to keep that role. However, I would argue that in any relationship, not just romantic, the worst thing is resentment. And a lot of that comes from expectations and you being expected to do something that you don't want to do, regardless of what that role is.
Well, and
Um,
that's oof. Yeah, you expectations I think is another point here in where a lot of this has maybe gone sideways historically,
mhm.
which
um,
that's a tough one to touch. But in both streets for the financial provider and the homemaker. Ooh,
I,
something with that expectation that like that gave me anxiety. That word.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Are you taught in your family to have run money?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
my mom was big. I think that was where I think a lot of women in general in that mindset, right? It's why we have a career, why we have the money, or is to have that run money.
Mhm.
And I like my separation was very difficult, and I didn't have run money. And I know, like when I was thinking about my relationship and whether or not I really wanted this, unfortunately, finances was a big reason why I stayed. I think as long as I did, and that to me should never be a conversation. And so I think, because I know we kind of briefly talked about this beforehand, I said, like, I don't want that old school version. I want what a new modern version of this could look like. And that financial component is really key in, and I don't know what that structure may look like, if it's in a joint bank account, but I do believe that a percentage of that money every month should go into your own individual account. There's no way around that. So that the person staying at home has access to their own money that is not tied in the joint whatever. When we're
Yeah.
talking about like this dynamic. Like Salty and I, we have a joint bank account, all our money goes in there together. But we're both contributing to that. And So there's no need to like we don't separate that out, but if you have somebody where like their job is staying at home, I think that is really, really key because if they're staying in that role and that position as homemaker, I agree. It's that they need to be doing it because they want to be in that role. And so if they are forced or financially controlled, then there's that we go back to that respect thing. And that's real tough because I know, at least when I've talked to men, the thought of putting 10% of their paycheck into their woman's bank account grades a lot of them. That's a real rough conversation, at least with the males that I've experienced in my life. And maybe anybody
Hmm.
who's hanging out in chat who is male could elaborate on that. But
That would be such a flag to balk at that for me. But
that would be like, I don't know, for instance, like in a queer relationship, like let's say you have that ideal world. Let's say I'm your wife. I'm your wife.
okay.
I'm nurturing, I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm caring, I'm doing everything. Would it hurt your ego or hurt your soul to take 10% of your paycheck and put it in my bank account?
If I'm being honest, do you want to know how I would approach 100%? Like,
Yeah.
if we want to play this out, how I would approach that?
Yeah.
We would sit down together, take the household expenses, so rent, bills, whatever that averages out for like electric, whatever your utilities, car payments, insurance, your revolving debt that doesn't change. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Put all that together, straight just pull it out of the paycheck, done, paid. What is left of individual bills like that, like phones, tablets, Apple Watches, but bills. You feel me?
Yeah.
Do you have asthma and allergy and need $500 worth of medication each month? That's a need. Okay. That's
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 also an
not a
American
coffee.
thing. We're not
Okay,
budgeting our prescriptions every month here in
well,
Canada.
well, for us, the necessities. Seriously, 100% of that, just pull it out of the paycheck. What
Yeah.
is left after that, after you have paid bills, that is like left over with like, I guess if we're doing wants, needs, and savings, your wants and your savings, take that 50%, do with it as you please.
So you went a step further than I did.
I mean, once it's paid and individuals, if in what you're talking about,
Mhm.
and we have talked about not just the context of I want to be a stay-at-home mom, I am going to stay at home, you work, but like, hey, I am a more nurturing individual. I want to do some of the more homemaking stuff that is at home, but I would like to split some of the more nurturing versus not nurturing. So I'd assume by like nurturing, you don't really want to cut the grass.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you know what I mean? Um, but that in this scenario sounds like a pretty 50-50 split to me. Like, yes, I'm leaving the house and I am making the money, but in that time, you are offsetting me making that money. The opportunity cost would be I could be at home cleaning. You are taking care of that duty, correct?
Yeah. See, but
So
then
in
like,
that scenario, what's only 10% is my question.
well, see, and then to me, like that is the
Then what's the
ideal.
other 40?
That's just me undercutting my value for sure. Right? Pushing
Okay.
past that because even in that, traditional world, sometimes a woman doesn't even have access to the bank account. So that was me just even, and that's some of the male hesitance that I've just experienced in my life. And that's not to say that all males would react that way, but it's interesting that your mind goes right to that 50-50 because you see the value in that.
I have a further question. Hold on hold on because I just thought of something. In this division of labor, I know you said more nurturing stuff. However, what does that entail? So, like, think mental labor, okay, because that's what I just zoomed in on. Because, like, cutting the grass, there's a cue to that. I don't have to think about that, I don't have to keep track of it. Cooking, oh my God, that's 50 steps in one. It's not just cooking. Are you talking about just cooking the meal? Are you talking about shopping for the meal? Are you talking about planning for the meal?
All of it. I would do all of that.
Okay, that's a huge mental labor category If you're handling that, and that also entails shopping for the home because you're probably easier for you to uptake, like keeping
Yeah.
shampoos filled,
Yep.
stuff like that. Okay. What mental labor do you envision me having in this partnership?
Not a whole bunch to be completely honest. Like the I guess and like the blue rolls, kind of like what you were saying, stuff that
So
I
car maintenance.
yeah. Like
That would come up, be a queue.
Salty
But
is
that's
very
all
good about
we could
that.
sit down and budget together.
Well,
Same with
yeah.
grocery bill.
Like
So I gotta
that's
be honest, I would amend my budgeting thing in a split. This is where we're at a split. If we sit down together and sort this out under the relationship umbrella before the split occurs. So like we would sit down on like a Sunday and be like, okay, first of the month, we got to change the oil. It's been X amount of whatever it is. Don't come for me, himbos. Okay, whatever it is that does maintenance. However often that happens. And then you've got like your 6-month maintenance, your year maintenance, all of that for whatever my categories are and yours.
yeah.
If we're sitting down together, then that would fold in under the split. And that would just be before we split 50-50. However, if that is just easier and you want to just do that, like there have been times that like, yes, my mom is paying the bills, but it is then also easy for her, and since she's cooking, to then buy everything for the house because those kind of go together. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, like the
If
running of the household to me,
yes,
that's that category.
okay. If that is something you want to do and you champion as just like, dude, it's just easier if you're cool just letting me do this, like you just give me the money, then I gotta be honest, that split would be more, you would probably, after we take care of the household, instead of a 50-50 split, that would probably be like a 70-30 split. That 70 would go to you because you would be buying for the whole household for both of us, plus your stuff. And I'm just thinking of me. I have nothing else to worry about. What am I spending my 50% on? You're buying for both the house, refilling soap.
That's a household income thing. So that would come like after. Like that's part of like the bills or like the
But I'm even
revolving.
talking mental labor,
Oh, just
like planning the
your
cooking.
value. Yeah.
Okay, well, I imagine when I go to the grocery store, I'm also going and stopping and getting a latte. If you're going to the grocery store 3 times a week, yeah, I think you should have a bigger latte run budget because my God, you're doing that and that's a part of it. So, like, seriously, if you're handling the majority of that to where all I'm doing is showing up and signing on the dotted line, yeah, I'm going to give you more of that because you're doing that mental labor that encompasses these other things.
I think, but
I
so
think at the minimum, it's a 50-50 split after that.
the way my brain kind of works, again, it defaults to that support role and how critical that can be. But let's say like you have to go to work but you
Okay.
don't have to worry about what you're eating in the morning. You don't have to worry about dinner or the
I
chores or
didn't even
anything.
think about that.
How
I
much
didn't even think
more
about my lunches.
right, how much more focused can you be? How much more time can you dedicate to your career and your drive? You're probably going to push further in your career than like let's say this week, right? Like tomorrow you're going to work. You've been busy doing chores all weekend. We filmed the podcast today. Like you're going to go to work, you're going to show up, you're still going to be tired. Like let you take all those other factors. Like I'm going to benefit in helping you pursue your career further, giving you more mental space, more bandwidth to push and accomplish what you need to accomplish. I will still benefit financially, and if we're splitting the finances and stuff, equally or however that may look, I still benefit by continuing to support you through your life.
Yeah.
And so those are those things that I think I get stuck on sometimes is I see so much of the value in having that support person, not just for the house, but for my partner too. How much more can you do in your career and your life if you don't have to think about all these other things that are in existence behind you?
Well, and I think we're good to demo this because this has surprised me. I'll be honest, in you talking about what you want and this being like your ideal fantasy, there have been several times I've sat here and been like, really? There are
I
people that actually want like the opposite side because like
I'm
when you're talking about being like a pocket healer, like poor example, but I'm like, dead ass? That's a thing?
I
That's what you want?
I thought when we were
You can
entering this
have it,
conversation, like,
bestie.
I thought I would end up flipping my opinion and going back to that, like, staunch I don't wanna say feminism route because that's not correct, but I feel like you know what I'm saying. I never thought that you would be dabbling with, like, "Yo, kinda want a stay-at-home wife," or, like, how nice that
I
would be.
I mean, yeah,
This took a
everything that
turn.
you've said that you want, like, I'll be honest, like, no, when you're like, "Well, I mean, if you had $5,000,000 and, you know, whatever, never had to worry about anything, would you not just stay at home?" No. I would find a fucking job somewhere. My god, give me a job doing something somewhere, please.
But see, and I think I've seen that with you before, though. I think you do default naturally to more of a provider role, and the nurturing like, you are a very nurturing person, but it takes a lot more spoons out. Like, let's say for you to nurture, it may take you 2 spoons, it might take me 1.
Well, I would just say nurturing in a different way because like dinners. I guess dinners is a good example when what you're talking about because in those examples we feel very opposite. I think of all the household stuff, I enjoy cooking. Don't
Mhm.
get me wrong, I enjoy the act of cooking. The planning of it, the, please don't make me decide 3 meals a day for the rest of my life. Just having someone else literally put food down in front of me, I'll eat it. It's probably also something with some of the restrictive eating stuff with me that like smelling it and cooking it means I cannot eat it. It's too long of a process versus if it is new thing just put down in front of me, my stomach is like, "Oh, hey, I can eat this." And I can eat it before the nausea catches up to me.
See, and my mind, like, even with your restrictive eating, my mind goes to, like, I would love to be able to cook for you every day and know that the food is safe for you. It makes you feel good, and, like, I'm providing that for you. And,
See,
like,
and
you
that is such a pain for me and such a not just do I not like doing it, but it really does cause difficulty. There was a time recently that I was pretty sick, and I honest to God, I would not have eaten, and I probably would have ended up in the hospital sooner than I did if my roommate did not have, like, share food a lot of the meals. Like, we will intentionally plan 2 or 3 meals. We live in the same freaking house together. "Hey, I'm cooking soup. Here's X amount. Do you want to eat the soup with me?" type thing. If that had not literally that week, there were times that they were like, "Hey, I'm heating this up. Do you want some too?" If that had not been put in front of me, would not have been able to eat it. There was no world where I could have cooked and ate. My nausea was that bad. That took like a level 2 off of her. That time she's already heating it up, you pour it in another container. Like a no-brainer, zero effort. For me, I would have paid my weight in gold that week. Was that valuable. Not just because I don't like it, but because it actively helps with a I don't know, a weird brain thing, health thing, ADHD, I don't know what it is. It helps with it. So like even while you're saying I'm back to the 50-50 conversation, you being like, "Wow, you land at 50-50," and I'm like, I'm struggling to get to 50-50. I'm struggling to see my value in this. I'm struggling to see what I'm doing other than providing money as a conduit to further this.
money is huge too, though. Like, I see the value in that. Like, I couldn't stay at home. I couldn't do those things if financially we weren't in a position to, or financially my partner's not working as hard as they do to make that all happen. But, like, for sake of just, like, happiness and life, imagine a world where every day you did come home and there was a meal ready there that you knew was home cooked with nothing that will bother you, that is sensory good, is good for your gut, good for everything else. Your lunch is made from you with these leftovers or wherever it may be. Sometimes it's leftovers, sometimes it's not. Right? But that's not even a thought process that goes through your brain. Like, would you be able to connect more to your relationships, to your life? Would you be able to work harder? And even just like quality of your relationship. You come home, and I mean, for you guys, you don't have kids in this. Well, us, I guess we're talking us. We're married in this
Yeah.
scenario. But like, let's say we don't have kids, or if we do, let's say both scenarios, right? Either you come home, you have that time to sit down and connect with the kids or the family, or if we don't have kids, you come home and it's just us. We we go for a walk maybe, or we watch a movie, or whatever it is. It's just us at that point. There's nothing else left to do in the house. There's no cooking. Maybe you clean up the kitchen for me as like a thank you after the end of that day. But let's say that's the only task left. There's just so much more time.
And playing through our scenario, live scenario we're talking about. If you cooked, I would clean. For sure.
Yeah.
That's just a default.
But like some other tradition, like so
The
one
rest of the
thing,
chores, of course.
yeah, like
One
whatever's
thing I
left.
definitely don't mind, dishes for sure. Oddly enough, I don't mind sweeping and mopping. Funny thing, really don't mind that.
But let's say okay,
I think of
like that's it.
go ahead.
Maybe. So like one thing my stepdad does for my mom that like just makes my soul, it's cute. Every Sunday, he takes my mom's car, he fills it up with gas, he takes it for a car wash, and he cleans the interior. And it's just like it preps her for the week. And it's something that's just, and he enjoys it. Right. So he's still like, there's still like components of chores and tasks, I would say. Like the kitchen would probably be mostly clean in our scenario. You'd maybe have to put a few pots and pans in the dishwasher. Sweep and mop after, yeah. I'm a fiend when I cut vegetables. That shit gets everywhere. I'm not gonna lie. But like, so there's just like a couple things to wrap up the household at the end of the day that you might have to do that would make me also feel good, like you care and appreciate what I've done. So let's say you're sweeping clean while I go shower and I'm done for the day. And then that's it. Like there's just, to me, my mind sees so much more moments for connection when one person doesn't work.
What I was thinking about that hit me then was that in that division of labor for the household, it seems that you were keeping up with a lot of like the routine upkeep because a lot of like the house stuff is very routine based. Like it has to be done every day. It's continuous, it's
Yes.
cyclical.
I like that. To be fair,
Ongoing.
I like repetitive, routine, cyclical tasks. That is also a caveat in that because not everybody is that way.
I hate it. That sounds like a
Mhm.
nightmare because nothing becomes routine to me. I have to think about it. So, to have stuff like that, like cooking or even eating, it's supposed to happen 3 times a day. You don't have a timer that goes off universally for everybody. You're just
Yeah.
kind of supposed to know when to do it. I struggle with that. What I don't struggle with is upkeep any type of anything that is either spontaneous or has a cue that is external. I.e., you had a really rough day at work, or I don't know, the kids are crazy, or I don't know, you're cramping that day. Cool. Cue. Big cue. All right, let's draw you a bath that night. All right, as you're in the bath, steal your towel. Let's put it in the dryer. Make sure it's nice, hot, and fluffy. Oh, favorite wine. Gonna stop and do that on the night. That's a cue. That breaks me out to where I get so honed in and hyper focused on my day to day, and a lot of that is work. I am prone to overworking, that I don't want to pick my head up unless I'm told to where I don't use the bathroom when I'm supposed to. I don't when my bladder's full. I go when I have time. That may be 6-7 hours from now.
And it's about to
But
explode.
stuff that has a
Yeah.
cue, the grass is too high. That annoys me. I just walked on the grass. I can see that. It gets to a point that it jars me out of it. You have a really rough day, or even just wake up and, hey, I haven't thought about you in a while. Even that's a cue. I might fill up your gas tank today and just make sure. But stuff that has a cue, I am, even like cleaning after dinner. The cue is you cooked. Okay, I clean.
And I'm
not an asshole forgetting about that stuff because it makes me not an asshole because there is a reminder.
But it makes me feel appreciated and taken care of, right? Because the same concept, though, the only other big thing when you stay at home is that sick days still have to apply, right? You're going to have days where you're down and out and you're not okay, right? You have the ability to take days off in your world, in the workspace. It has to be no different at home, but that comes back to that deep level of respect and trust that has to happen. Like, this cannot happen and can become toxic so quickly. I think regardless of a queer relationship or a straight whatever, there is a whole, you have to really trust and respect the other person. So when I say, let's say nothing got done in the house today because I'm feeling sick, you have to trust that I am telling you the truth, and you have to respect me enough to know that that is the truth. And sometimes I think that can be rough. Egos get in the way. It's very easy to feel disproportionate in a relationship, to feel like I'm working harder than my partner. And you have to be able to check that ego sometimes.
Yeah.
And not, I mean, even,
Yeah.
Salty and I, we both work, we both contribute to the house, we both clean, cook, we split everything. And even then, I at times can feel my ego feeling like I'm working harder. And I have to really reel myself back in to be like, he's doing the best he can at this moment with what he's got. And we do have a very nice ebb and flow. There are times when he's doing 90% and I can only do 10, and vice versa. We're never 50-50. I would say that very confidently. We're never 50-50 in running our household, as it's not possible. Everybody ebbs and flows. But when we're shifting this like homemaker conversation, that's where that deep level of trust has to come from. I am shocked. I am shocked that it's you who is coming around on this conversation.
What do you mean?
The vibe I got, so I guess for everyone else to preface, like we briefly overviewed this conversation with each other because we wanted to keep our interaction authentic. But I think I still knew your baseline of like almost like hyper independence. I expected a lot of hyper independence pushback on this conversation. And like,
I don't.
and like the protection, like more of the toxic conversations, right? Where, women have been left not having the run money, forced into situations, unable to leave something that's not good for them. They're no longer healthy, right? I expected a lot more push, which none of that stuff is allowed. Like if we're talking about bringing this back and bringing the nuclear family, blah, 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 there has to be a huge conversation about that kind of shit. Because that, to me, in my mind, is null and void and is not even allowed to enter this conversation. If you are doing this, it is like, it's like a privilege in even the relationship world. Like, I get it. It's a privileged financial world, but even in the relationship, this is like the cream of the cream, top tier. You have the best trust, communication, and respect in order to pull this off.
Where I think what you read in our interactions when we talked about it before, with me kind of balking at it. How to say this? We're talking in theory right now.
Yeah.
Should this be able to exist? Yeah, fuck yeah, it should.
It's
Debate that all day
fantasy.
long. Now, if you were to debate the question of, in America, should this be enforced, be a thing? Okay, well, now we've just swapped from ideal to, like, actually implementing, in which case, no way in hell is that achievable. For X reasons that we could argue. Well, we want it to be available. Yeah, income, socioeconomic status. There's going to be such a split. It's not even going to be middle class. They're going to think they're middle class. It's going to be upper middle class and the wealthy that that's going to be accessible to. It's going to put a strain on things. It would be a dumpster fire. However, if we're debating ideals and should that exist, yeah. Should that only exist to women? Now that's when the debate comes in with it being like a feminine thing, which in our discussions, I think you kind of concede that point that, like, initially, surface level, yeah, that's what people think, and initially, but even you've said you don't view it as a feminine split, that, like, if Salty wanted to stay at home and you had no desire to, it should be available to him, and I haven't heard you disagree with that point.
Yeah, no, I'm gangbusters on that one. My brain defaults to those feminine roles, and maybe we need to get away from labeling that as like it, because it is, but historically this has been a feminine role, a feminine, whatever. And that's where I was interested to talk to you about it from the queer perspective, because you take that, blue chore, pink chore situation out of it, and you just look at who likes doing what task? What is the most equitable? If you hate doing laundry, but I love it, why would I force you to do laundry? Like, so there is that nuance to that conversation and, and modernizing it. But I think even in school, like maybe let's just start discussing this as a possibility or an outcome, right? Like when we're in school,
Yeah.
is you need grades because you need a career and you need to figure it out. What are you going to be? Take your aptitude test. There's not this conversation of it's okay just to be a homemaker. Education, 10 out of 10. You need to go through high school, you need to do whatever. But, let's say too, even as the kids get older and I want to maybe take some courses or expand my knowledge or maybe start an at-home business or do something too, right? I still have those avenues too if I want to explore it, to better myself. Maybe it's not. Maybe I want to do yoga courses or like whatever it is, right? Whoever is staying home, like I can have the availability to explore things because I am a little bit more of a lost soul. I don't really know what I want to do with my life. I like to explore different avenues and maybe, Salty has known what he's wanted to do since fucking the man was 5 and is like so secure in that. That person wants to stay there. Like, but if it was reversed and maybe like I knew I wanted to do this and
Mhm.
he wanted to explore his life a little bit, right? There's just so many possibilities of positive things that could come from this. And that's what my brain has a hard time being like, I wish that we don't even not normalize it per se, but have more open conversations and not look down on it. In school, there is no way. If I had said I wanted to be a homemaker in my physics class, I'm fairly certain my physics teacher would have been like, "What are you on?" Like, that's not even a conversation.
I find it funny because you said Salty has it all, like mapped out. Um, Going back to our example, our mock-up example of you and I, because that seems to have fit into some opposite roles surprisingly very easy. Um, what hit me when you said that is I'm the same like him some in that this particular area that this scenario lends itself to, my career, pretty locked in. Even as much as some days we've talked about this, I may not love my career. I'm not changing. That's what I'm gonna do. That's pretty focused. In the scenario of like a stay-at-home situation with a partner, what I do think with everything that we've talked about with you in this scenario handling the more routine tasks and everything, what struck me as what that opens up is more free time because you said you would have more free time to basically dream
I'm a dreamer.
in that
I like to
situation.
dream for
Okay.
sure.
So you have acknowledged that in that scenario, that gives you more of that free time, correct?
Yeah.
In the scenario and picturing it, I would acknowledge that that would also give me that freedom because I'm doing the thing that I already know, my career. You're taking care of that stuff during the day in its place. Whether it's because you want to figure out your career or because you don't care and you want this to be your career. Okay, cool, valid. However, what I'm also hearing is that in that scenario, what I imagine is that I would have more free time to plan like weekend outings because that's where my mind is going to go. Okay, the day to day is done. What I've thought of in that scenario
Spontaneous.
yeah, exactly, was like, okay, hey, the day is done. What would you do with the rest of your time? And I was like, fuck, I don't know. That would be nice. Probably paint
So many
or
things.
write. But
I
then that would lend itself to your individual stuff. And then I'm definitely going to get bored of that, what will become routine stuff to me. So then on the weekends, hey, um, you've had decision fatigue. You tell me if I'm wrong on this. You've had decision fatigue throughout the week for cooking. You've done the routine stuff. Wake you up, hit you with it. Hey, so Saturday night, here's our weekend plans. This is like a Thursday. Saturday night, 7 o'clock, I've booked a babysitter. Don't worry about it. Put on something fancy. Here's this and that. We'll be there for 4 hours. You just be ready to go. And then Sunday, you've got the day to yourself, except for from like 11 to 2. I say we go get mimosas and some brunch, and let's brunch, come home and nap. What you say?
know, like You just gave me, like, a mental big O, basically.
I mean, but to me, it's not even gender roles I'm hearing, but just really taking an intentional look and being communicative and honest about, hey, with these expectations, it doesn't even feel like expectations because, like, that sounds good to me. And just being honest about that and neither of us being resentful and then finding that it does work together
Like
because
and it was
that shit.
yeah, that's a it that crossed my mind when you were talking about, like, the cyclical tasks, the routine, the daily tasks, how much I like that and I enjoy that, and
Yeah.
my mind went to, you hate it, you don't like that, it really grates you, what makes your soul happy is that spontaneity, but if somebody's taking care of all that cyclical stuff, then it gives you more ability to be spontaneous, to surprise or plan, or, like, let's say even in the evening, everything's done, everything's handled, everything's taken care of, you can be like, "Yo, there's, like, a live band, like, let's fucking go."
Yeah. And that's a way to show, like, the acts of service to you because that frees up my bandwidth that you would expect that I am gonna use on myself. Okay, what is Space gonna do in their free time? What is Space gonna do this weekend? How loved would it make you feel if, oh my god, the first 3 things I list off when I see you on Monday morning is, "Hey, babe, booked this for Tuesday night for us because I know that's your off night without the kids and that's when we chill, so I booked that for us. Here's this." And then, oh my god, so the first 3 thoughts you had with your free bandwidth, 30% of that basically, that went to me?
But you have that because you're being taken care of.
Yeah.
Like, everything, all your cups are being filled by your partner so you can give to them, but not only that, like, it's kinda like it's the dual thing, right? Taking care of you and being nurturing fills my cup, makes me happy, and in the same thing for you, being spontaneous, you enjoy being spontaneous naturally yourself, but then you're allowed to do that for your partner as well, so you're getting this double fulfillment feeling by being able to do that.
I think in playing on that and turning it to the times that I have not felt seen in that in previous relationships, and this ties into the expectations and communication for it, surprisingly enough, and I'm surprised to see this. The times I haven't felt seen are the times that, like, the argument would come in that, like, "Well, what do you mean you want me to do more of X, like the cooking, mental load stuff? That's planning. You've said you like planning. I like planning spontaneous stuff, not all of it. Not all of it all the time."
Yeah.
And so then it's almost this like, dude, I feel like I'm doing a ton of this stuff that like really weighs me down. And I've said like, dude, this is heavy for me to carry. Like if I'm carrying this, I can't carry as much. I just can't. This is huge to me. And then you being like, well, it's not that big a deal to me, but I'm gonna need you to carry more. Oh my God, that just feels so tone deaf and just makes me feel so not understood and heard in that, that the only way you want to see it is your way. Um, I wonder how many relationships could benefit from really honest communication. And I think that takes a lot of trust to be that honest, to be like, hey, laundry, I don't like that. I'm not a slob. I'm not a rat. Here's why. Here's what bugs me about it. There's no cue. Yes, the thing goes off, but then it's the folding. If you could just fold the laundry, I can keep it going all day long. Oh my God, all you need me to do is fold the laundry when the buzzer goes off? Fuck. That shit'll never not be folded. It'll be folded hot. Do you need me to steam it while I'm there? When you really talk about what it is, it's the laundry as a whole. It's having a cue and a thing, and then it's stopping. And then there being something that jams it up. Oh my God. Well, I hate having to keep up with it and go and gather it and put it in and transfer it, and that drives me nuts. If I could just come in and fold for 5 minutes and then walk off, oh, that's a dream. Honey, we have just fixed a whole thing for America. Congratulations. Sign me up. 3 easy payments of $9.99. I'm there.
But
Like,
it's that rather than equal, it's the equitable. We're playing to our strengths. And maybe and in some it won't work for all relationships. Let's say you get two
no.
people who are very career driven and that makes their souls happy and maybe they hire maids or whatever else to do. Power to them. But in this dynamic, this is what I'm missing in my life. I can't believe we
Yeah.
so it's funny. We have like a little like timeline or not timeline, but guide to like what we try to follow and hit our points. And our very, last point was what was the common ground. And I find it so interesting that we got here, but not in the way I thought. Well, I don't know. I didn't really have a thinking point for like I didn't know what the common ground would be in this. And it's interesting that I'm kind of bringing you over to the dark side a little bit.
I just got captivated by your cat deciding whether he was gonna be an asshole and, like,
Oh,
make that
he's
cat move or lay next to him or whether he
no,
was gonna go to the other side, but there was a moment where that cat thought, like, "Am I gonna make your bitch ass move or am I gonna go find another
he's
spot?"
literally right here. He's
Oh,
sitting there. He was like questioning it. He's like, "Yeah, I want you to stay home all day too, mom."
which one was the one sitting on the lights?
This one,
Ah, that figures,
he like,
that figures.
and to be to his credit, they are warm. I can see like why he would want to sit on them. They, I saw it happen a couple times. Like while we've been filming, all of a sudden, like looks the lights don't look blue. I can see my wall color suddenly, and I'm like, that ain't
I had
it.
wondered.
That ain't it, fam. No, it's the fat cat sitting on things. Oh, well, I'm pleasantly surprised how this went, but I think in everything we've talked about, this is maybe what we really wanted and what was really important is to explore this without judgment, without fear, and some of it is a really sensitive topic to approach, but look how fast when we're open were we able to come around to understanding something that maybe you were a little bit hesitant to at first.
I think a lot of people in a lot of situations has more common ground than people would want to admit because then that means that you can easily be that other person. And when we're, as a human, as judgmental as we are, it's really easy to draw like us or them lines. And you want the us to never be like the them. And when the us could very easily be the them and then it swapped back and forth, like, well, then you're just as guilty.
I think probably
I feel like it's a whole lot more gray than it is black and white
I think it's to be
in
true
general.
maybe about a lot of issues is that you're actually closer to the point and closer to each other than you realize. You just have to be able to have that conversation unapologetically and delicately.
Feel like there was some quote, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it stuck with me a little bit that when you're alone, kind of like facing an issue, when you're alone facing the issue and you're no longer like face to face with a person, you don't see anybody around you. That sometimes it's not because you're alone, it's sometimes because you're either like shoulder to shoulder facing the problem or you're back to back in the same situation, i.e., you're closer to it than you actually realize just because you don't see them in your field of view doesn't mean that you're not in some shared experience together with it.
Yeah. I'm really pleasantly surprised by this conversation today.
Me too. It was very centering. I do have one question that didn't get asked that I'm just dying to know though.
Okay. Yeah. Hit me up.
Okay. So, if in the scenario with you and Salty, okay, and say that I'm not talking about no conversation about what he wants versus you. He just gets to be stay at home dad
Mhm.
and do all of that. You got to work, okay?
Yep.
Regardless of the rest of the division of labor, just him getting to do that more nurturing role more. I know like you would like working for a little bit, okay? Would that bother you some that he gets to be at home like doing more of that than you do? Or is it enough that it is just equal? What is your more, I guess what I'm after is your more natural pull.
My natural goal would be to stay at home. But that being said, I do love working too. There is a part of me that I think still always has that career drive.
Mhm.
Um, so that comes down to the time and the quality thing. If I'm able to go out and enjoy my career and not have to worry and think about the kids' appointments and what are we going to eat,
No, he
who's
handles
doing what.
all of that. Everything. You whatever your ideal version of that, like you show up, dinner's there, done. You don't have to think about it. He packs your lunches. He even plans weekend dates. He does everything.
Yeah.
After all you got to do is focus on your career. However, while you're at work, we'll say 16 hours a day. You do have to work more.
Okay. Yeah.
You get text messages and videos of movie nights with the girls. Is that gonna be a thing where eventually you're like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, see,
Does
something
that balance that out?
yeah, something about it's still
It
okay
does?
with me because
Okay.
I'm doing something for my family that allows them to do that. I'm providing. It's a different type of nurturing. It's more of that provider role, but
Yeah.
I'm still being that conduit that is able to allow my family to do that. Allow my family to have that privilege, that connection, that and that's where you were kind of like almost downplaying the provider role. Like to me, they're both equally as important. You can't have one without the other. You need to have them together. And so, whatever role that may be, if I just have to fully focus on work, I would love that. I do love working. I get so caught up in, I have to do both and I can't do both. There's too many balls to juggle with both. And no matter what, something is always going to drop.
You know, you made a point though, and that is, I won't say a call out, but kind of a good call out. Because I don't underplay that role because I think that. That is almost like a knee jerk because those around me have done that. And I have to say, when we're talking about feminist rants and all that, that does kind of bug me because the times I've had conversations with the males in my life about like gender roles and stuff, there is sometimes, I don't say like a self-deprecating, but almost like a dismissive or a put down that like, well, that's all I am is just like the cash cow or like the provider for it. When I guess until this analogy and like playing out how apparently I am more like the traditional man than I thought I am. Um and thinking that I would feel some of that guilt and like that, oh well, I'm just the provider. No, it frees me up to do it in different ways, which has got to be true for the men in my life as well. That's just something they don't vocalize and talk about. Because it's always, I know as humans, there's not that big of an emotional capacity difference between males and females. It cannot not bother millions of males that they're away from their family. So it has to be like feeling that in some way. And until this conversation, I don't think it's fully clicked for me the ways that that could be alternatively fulfilling and still feel supportive. But that makes more sense. I know they're not monsters and like heartless. So like how can so many of you go out there and do that and like feel okay with it? But in playing through this, if you are contributing in a different way, I mean, that makes sense.
Putting value to both. And if you want to put like financial value to both, you can think about it that way. Cause there's been like cost analysis before on like what a stay at home mom is worth, like salary wise. Like if you had to pay for every aspect of somebody who stays at home, it's a high paying job. And so if both and sometimes it's hard, right? It's that money, it's that ego to feel like this person is spending money. They're buying their clothes, right? Like real deal. Anything I want or need, if you're the financial provider, I'm buying. If I need, some Pokemon cards to perk up my day that day, I'm going to buy them. And you have to be at an ego level okay with that. With understanding though that I also made your lunch for you. I put your clothes out for you that day. Everything's prepped and ready for you. Not like you want for nothing or no, you need for nothing. Well, maybe want to. You want for nothing in the house. It's taken care of. Therefore, financially, that means that I should still be able to go shopping and still do the things. And I think sometimes there is that disconnect, especially with males. They're very protective of their money.
Do you think when you think of like traditional roles and we're talking about like the spontaneous, cyclical, that type of thing.
Mhm.
In our example, pretty much one person took care of the cyclical stuff, the ongoing stuff, and another person took care of the spontaneous, right? I wonder if with like the split with traditional roles, how that currently looks like. In my initial stuff, what I thought of, like what has existed in my past and what I've seen from like growing up around me, is that when both are sharing the spontaneous and cyclical, it seems that like the typical woman's cues are go cues. like buying stuff, cooking dinner, keeping things going, and it seems like then the males spontaneous cues that come in are like stop cues. Hey, let's go on a vacation. Hey, honey, stop and put your feet up for a minute. Hey, why don't I draw you a bubble bath and do this and that? And then some of the frustrations I feel like from the women are, oh my God, I don't always have time to stop and enjoy this. And some of that, if you could take some of the go cues from me so I could stop. And it's just still interesting to me how I can find common ground even in the way it's split now.
But that's a very good way to put it.
Hmm.
Regard if you're both working and you're both splitting the home, you're both gonna have to do tasks that for your soul are draining, are a killer to you. And you're not playing to your strengths. So you're going to be exhausted. And that's a conversation I've had so many times. I need shit taken off of my plate. My mental load is fucking not even to the max. That shit is flooding over. But
Do you
that's
think that's a problem in today's relationships?
oh, huge.
That it's not necessarily like in the conversation, I want to take things off of your plate. What can I take off? Take this off. But then takes not necessarily the easy or the wrong stuff, but the wrong for what you're looking for relief. Like if you were to take a spontaneous thing off of my plate, you haven't taken a thing off my plate, you've taken a treat.
Yep.
Now I'm double worse.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks for helping. Could you not help more?
Yep. It's
You know what I mean?
absolutely. Because it's no matter what, when you're split the way you're split between work and working at home and whatever else, there's just too much. There's not enough spoons. And if my spoons are all gone and you throw a knife at me, like that shit is not gonna help me. I'm sorry. It's
You
just
spork
not.
me.
Yeah, don't fucking spork me, but you do the best with what you can. But that's where that analytical brain of me always comes back to. It's not about gender roles. It's not about whose job is more important. It's truly just time. It's just time in a day. And when you're both working, you're both running the house, you have kids or whatever else, there's just not enough time. You take that full-time job away from one, and I can almost guarantee you'd be surprised how well or how much better your relationships could be. Think about it even like maybe in like your family. Like let's say just even outside of your relationships, outside of your life. Same kind of concept. If you're not worried about the house, all the things in the world, you have more opportunity to connect with your family, your friends, explore the things you love. It's good for everybody involved. We came to a place of just wanting quality time and love and connection. What song is it? This is a
That's a good one though.
yeah, it's a vibe. It's always funny because I never hear like when I'm doing or like the editing after the music's not there, and a lot of the time I turn it down. Today we're in the same jam party, so we can hear the music together, which is kind of fun.
Yes.
I'm
I've enjoyed it.
yeah, and it's a good vibe. It allows me to think still and not be overwhelmed by the sound.
Yes.
All right, so what I'm hearing is you would like a stay-at-home wife.
Yes, if we're gonna boil a conversation down to reductive terms such as that, I wouldn't be so opposed to it. Apparently.
Now I really want to get you a shirt that says daddy.
Oh God. Oh God. I don't know how I feel about that.
Wow. This has been oddly fulfilling too for me. Like to feel a little bit understood and heard and not so crazy in this conversation.
Not at all. Just because I don't share in it, I definitely think it's valid. I get it. I get where the desire comes from.
What a way. What a way to go. Well, thank you for letting me explore that. That was fun. I enjoyed this.
It was fun to explore with you. I
I mean,
think did did my views and presentation on it align with how you thought or expected, I guess.
I thought you would be way more aggressive and resistant to it. And it was mostly because you're like, I have strong opinions about this topic. And I was like, oh, yo, I'm gonna get I thought I was gonna get like a good Southern whooping. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, I do have my strong opinions, but I mean, I guess it helps too the way in which we discuss things and debate things,
Mhm.
in that the things that I guess I would stand on and fight you on aren't things that we've disagreed. That's kind of common area that it's up to the individual. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're the type of person that enforces those, to me, gender roles and stuff, regardless of whether you're queer or straight, that has nothing to do with who you are or identity. That's just you being an undeveloped asshole that needs some therapy. To me, spaces, opinions, not the channels. Disclaimer.
So therapy for everybody.
Yeah.
Ah,
Everybody needs more therapy.
there you go.
If
There's
we
our
can't
common
forgive
ground.
student loans in America, we just need some vouchers for some very good therapy, but not better health. Not at all.
Right. Well, should we call her a
Call it
day?
good. I mean, they know where to find us. Y'all do know where to find us, right? On all socials, it is the space that's left, except for Twitter. Drop the space that's left.
Listen, to be fair, I don't even know which ones we have the on and which ones we don't at this point. Every time I
I
log
double check.
in or it's a new thing for me every time. But
That's yeah, it's the Twitter. So the other T one, TikTok, Instagram, Spotify podcast.
yeah,
Plug the Spotify podcast, the Twitch. All of it is the space that's left, except for Twitter, who lost their X now. So lost. See, they're not T anymore. Drop the D.
there you go.
Yep,
They
yep.
dropped it, so we dropped it. There you go. Makes all
Exactly.
sense.
Exactly.
And if you ever want to participate in the conversation, it's always live in color on Twitch, and offline we're in black and white because you can't interact. So for those listening on Spotify and everything else, if you want to join in the conversation live in color, please join us every other Sunday, in
Every
theory, most of the
other.
time. But
Yes.
we're two ADHDs. It's kind of hard to schedule us sometimes. But
It's what you're here for. It's what you signed up for.
we had a
Love
rough
it.
start. We had life get into it. Maybe, we'll be a little, who knows? We'll ride it out. But yeah, please come back. Please continue the conversations offline. The Discord, both of us are there and active. If you have your opinions or you want to explore this topic or any other topic, real deal, explore it. This is the whole point. We want to be able to talk about these conversations and have that safe space to feel like I felt really odd or difficult in having this opinion or dirty. I don't know what the word is, but like being able to explore it has been really nice. And I think everybody needs that. Explore it regardless of what side you're on with no judgment.
Yeah. Glad we could facilitate a space for you to kind of think about some of that. And honestly, for the podcast, but also personally, thanks for being open about that and being willing to discuss and speak candidly about your thoughts and experiences, because I don't think some of those conversations are possible to reach that common ground if you aren't vulnerable first in where you're coming from on some things.
It was like a little therapy session for me. It was great.
So want to honor that and thank you for you taking on that risk to make a awesome conversation possible.
Yeah, having that landing space, you'd be surprised how like comforting and how important that is to have that just that landing pad to think about. Or like I call you a sounding board a lot of the time. Like when I need to work through something, I just need that space to bounce those ideas off,
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We'll have a good couple of weeks. We'll be back, hopefully.
We will be back.
I'm wedding dress shopping that weekend, so
That is also Easter for the States. So
yeah. So maybe
we'll talk.
we'll figure it out. We'll
probably
post
might
it in
move
the
it.
Discord.
Yeah.
We'll probably, who knows? We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Updates are in the Discord, and until then, have a good couple weeks. Enjoy the space that's left, I guess.
Go drink some water and touch some grass.
Yeah, you all are gamers. We already know that.
Absolutely.
Have a
Bye,
good
you
night,
guys.
everyone. Bye.